We're in the age of retention editing and maximalism in every sense of the word. People raise concerns, and it's led me to wonder, is YouTube truly degrading, or is this just another trend that will pass? Welcome to my channel, Stariegazer. You can call me Charlie. This is JJ, my technical son. He's a lot of help here. mrbeast is often blamed for this issue, so let's start there. mrbeast is an easy person to pin the blame on when it comes to the degradation of YouTube. Jacksepticeye went so far as to say he ruined YouTube last year, which caused a pretty big discussion online. Jack basically says that he thinks that mrbeast made YouTube more about making money and getting views than about truly having fun. We'll start with considering my previous views on the situation when it first happened. To be honest, these may have been somewhat gained from the person who I watched initially discuss the situation, which was D'Angelo Wallace. And if you see the comments on there, people didn't really agree with him, and you may also not agree with how I used to think about this. At the time, I mostly disagreed with this statement because he didn't really introduce the idea of glorifying money and views and fame to the platform. Before him, there was that whole Jake Paul era of just clout and money and diss tracks and look at all these cars I have and the money, and it was that whole thing basically. And so could mrbeast's content not just be considered as a continuation of that era? At the time, me and others also interpreted Jacksepticeye's statement as more so that mrbeast, because he's so big, so many people copied him, which then led to the degradation of YouTube. Basically, that a bunch of copycat channels popped up and they were just copying his stuff to like a T, like down to the thumbnails. And once that spread all over YouTube, that basically started to kill it and ruin it. I thought if this is what Jacksepticeye meant by that statement, then that's not really fair, because it's not mrbeast's fault that people copy him, and it's not his fault that that then leads to that oversaturation problem. It's hard to say this is what Jacksepticeye meant though, because it was like 2 sentences in a random video. Now to continue my views in current times, as I rewatched that video and went back seeing what people were saying at the time, and I definitely understand where he was coming from now. Firstly, to talk about my previous point about how mrbeast could just be considered a continuation of that clout era trend. Honestly, this doesn't really count, as clout and money and all of that stuff represented different things in this mrbeast era versus in that clout era. And it was also received in different ways. In the clout era, money was meant to flex on people and show them that you were better than them and you cannot reach their level. Whereas in the mrbeast era, it's for shared entertainment and for charity. If someone made fun of Jake Paul for being flashy, other people would join in and continue memeing on him. If someone made fun of mrbeast for being flashy, then suddenly it's, oh, so we hate charity? You hate game shows? It means 2 completely different things in these completely different eras. mrbeast is praised for being flashy, which you could argue influences other creators to act the same way. I still do agree that it's not mrbeast's fault that other channels copy him. Again, if it wasn't mrbeast, it would just be a different content creator that everyone's trying to copy. Overall, I don't think that mrbeast ruined YouTube. I think he studied analytics, adapted his content to fit what those analytics wanted, and then saw reward for it. When people saw that his strategy worked, they copied it, whether fully ripping from his content or just taking from that retention editing style. This then influenced YouTube to become what it is now. I'm assuming some may disagree with this opinion. It really depends on whether you see mrbeast as the creator of the system or as someone who fell in line with it. Personally, I believe he's someone who fell in line with it, but I can understand if you think the former. Like I said, if it wasn't mrbeast at the top, it would just be some other weird hyper content or content creator, and everyone would just be copying them instead. Like, we had the 3 AM challenge era, the prank era, the clout era, and now we're in that mrbeast era. This leads us back to our question. Is YouTube degrading, or is this just another trend? If we think of dominating YouTube content in terms of trends and eras, this would lead the answer more towards this is just another trend that will pass. Usually, the end of an era comes with the biggest creator from that era having a downfall, like what we saw with the whole J Station situation, basically leading to that decline of 3 AM challenge videos. With how mrbeast is being talked about on literally every drama channel right now, it seems like it's time for that downfall of that mrbeast era as well. Well, let's get further into the effects of the mrbeast era on the platform. Has he done more damage than I'm giving him credit for? We'll also be investigating the difference between retention editing and its direct contrast, authentic editing. Firstly, we'll get into what retention editing actually is. In YouTube terms, retention is when you hold someone's attention for a prolonged amount of time. Retention editing is putting in so many edits and flashing lights that you can't look away from the constant action happening on screen. Basically, you make every word sound like it's about to be the most important thing you've ever heard. mrbeast is often credited for creating and popularizing this style. While not everyone likes visually loud videos like this, it is pretty popular on the platform, mostly with children's content. This style does get pretty overwhelming when it's overused and overdone, especially when it's not needed. Like, I'm imagining most of us can think of that one video that just had too many jump cuts. Like, I was watching this coding video one time, and the guy he kept on cutting to like different views of his face, and he's just cutting in between sentences, and it was so jarring to watch, and I just had to take it off. Like, it was almost dizzying. Focusing on making a video dense with action can make it lose its quality as well. I like how this other video explained it, where basically you have to cut out every single little personal story or little side tangent, basically anything that shows any part of you that isn't directly related to the subject at hand, because you don't want to even risk having someone lose attention for a little bit and risk them completely clicking off of your video. It is very analytically focused, numbers focused. I like how this commenter put it, where it's about metrics over artistic intent. There is a proper way to use this style though. I remember I watched this video a while back that was talking about that trend of authentic editing. He kind of critiques one of his older videos for trying too hard with the whole retention editing thing. It honestly surprised me that he didn't really agree with that video anymore. Honestly, the best part of that video was the editing. Like, he used all these green screen effects, and it was flashy, but in a way that felt intentional, and it was relevant to the video because the whole video is about editing techniques, and in the video he's using a bunch of editing techniques. And so honestly, it was kind of disappointing to hear that he wasn't that proud of it anymore. It's his own opinion if he doesn't really agree with that video anymore, but I think it just goes to show that you can do all that flashy editing in an artistic way, in a way that can actually be inspiring to other people. I don't want you to just think that like flashy edits equals the person doesn't really care about the video they're making. They're trying to just grab the attention of every little 5-year-old in the audience. Now for the flip of retention editing, authentic editing. Authentic editing is defined by its focus on personality over editing. Basically, the core of the video is already interesting, so you don't have to try to make up for any boring bits with putting flashy lights and everything. It's mostly defined by its slower paced style. Honestly, I feel like it makes up for that lack of editing with just how beautiful some of the shots in these videos look. Like, I was seeing some of the examples that the videos are going through, and each frame of the video looked like it could be a portrait or something out of some like fancy artsy movie. Some example channels I heard of the most when it comes to authentic editing were Life by Riza, Natalie Wren, and Sam Solik. Most creators I saw also define this style as enhancing your message instead of drowning it out, and basically editing to the context of your video. Overall, it's focus on making a connection with the viewer. Now from my own view of this authentic editing versus retention editing debate. Basically, I feel like it's kind of ironic to call authentic editing because what's authentic to me isn't the same thing as what's authentic to you. Basically, within my own videos, visually, they do fall into that retention editing genre. There's a lot of like colors and vibrance and edits and everything that typically is associated with that retention editing, even though I'm not actively trying to go for that. But I do still consider that type of editing authentic to me. Theoretically, my editing style falls into authentic editing because I am doing it to enhance my personality. It does fit the context of the video, but visually it still does fall into retention editing, and so I feel like calling it authentic editing isn't really a proper title for it. I prefer the term slow-paced editing because in all the examples, the videos were just slower paced. There's this concept of a pendulum swing in fashion where every some years we go from high maximalism to high minimalism, and it feels like that's what's happening with YouTube as well, where before the whole thing was lights and the edits and the colors, but now people are craving that more slow-paced talk on a normal speed, and basically just the opposite of what mrbeast represents. Now that retention editing and flashy editing in general has this negative association because of mrbeast basically using that style to allegedly exploit kids, I see creators moving away from that negative association. Honestly, I don't really see YouTube fully switching over to minimalist styles in editing because short form content is still popular, attention spans are still low, so like the dominant thing is probably always gonna be flashy stuff. I do just see that gap in the market for more slow-paced content. Personally, I like the channel Oscar Owen's view of this thing where you aim for somewhere in between that retention editing and authentic editing, where you have a video that has all that editing and stuff that most people enjoy while not sacrificing your personality. For an overall view of this whole authentic editing versus retention editing thing, I think it ultimately comes down to personal preference. Personally, I wouldn't say I have a bad attention span, but I could not sit through a simple video with no sort of cuts or edits at all. And I'm assuming that other people may feel the same way. Or you may be the type of person that absolutely hates when like YouTubers do that slow zooming in or zooming out thing, which is fair as well. Honestly, it's just what you like, it's what you like and what you gravitate to, and there's not really an issue with any of the styles exactly. They're just styles. I don't think any sort of morality should be placed on these styles, because just because someone edits in a more retention edity sort of way, it doesn't mean that they're just searching for analytics and all they care about is views. The same way, just because someone is editing slower pace, it means that they're like the most genuine person ever. With the context of how mrbeast's style influenced how content creators create, is it still fair to believe that this is just another era that will pass, or is there an actual degradation of YouTube happening right now? I've seen a few mrbeast interviews and he focuses a lot on metrics and analytics and how he uses that to drive his content. In terms of that previous comment, he very much so fits that metrics over artistic intent approach. This does teach other creators to act in the same way because they see that it does work. It's different than that whole copycat channel defense because these creators aren't copying from mrbeast's content. They're adopting his mindset on YouTube and using that to change the way they make videos. In a recent video, Tommy Innit kind of talks about how before, when YouTube just started, no one really knew what would do well. They really did just do it for the fun of it. But now, however many years later, we have an idea of what sort of content will do well and what will do bad. mrbeast is the prime example of this. mrbeast follows what the viewer wants to an extreme. And it's not even what they say verbally, like commenting, oh, I like this type of video. It's going into YouTube Studio and seeing every time the video spikes and increases in viewership. It really removes that human element to this whole thing, because instead of what are they saying that they like, he's going and looking at it mathematically and figuring out that perfect formula to make that best video ever that everyone will love. It honestly just really removes that human elements of YouTube, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of the app. If everyone approaches YouTube from this detailed analytical mindset, then they'll miss the bigger picture of what's happening with their content. Instead of catering to that niche of people that genuinely care about what they have to say and whatever art or interest they have to share, they're focused on what will appeal to the most generic amounts of people, and that will therefore give me the highest amount of views, not realizing that they're basically making a fan base of fickle viewers that will move on to the next thing the second they stop following what's trendy. This analytical viewpoint can't fully be credited to mrbeast though, as YouTube Studio directly encourages this. When you open up the app, if you're doing bad, it'll show you all those reds, negatives, down arrow, oh my gosh, literally no one cares about what you're putting out right now. But then if you're doing well, it's all green, oh my gosh, everyone loves you, you have a zillion subscribers. And they would be the OGs of making YouTubers think about analytics. It actively discourages you from making anything that appeals to a specific niche. In an attempt to chase these fickle trends that general audiences crave, creators end up isolating that core fan base that was there all along. This leads to that oversaturation and the effects of that mrbeast grind set, just covering every little genre on YouTube. If this trend were to continue, it could indeed lead to that degradation of YouTube. So finally, let us answer that question. Is YouTube truly degrading, or is this just another trend that we'll pass? In my opinion, we were heading down that degrading route, but I think we're starting to stray off that path now. Like I said earlier, the end of an era comes with a downfall of its top creator. Now that everyone is calling out mrbeast, people aren't gonna want to take his advice on stuff like creating content anymore. Because who wants to get YouTube tips from the guy who allegedly exploits children and literally torments people for internet views? There's also been a lot of big creators, mostly OG creators, talking about this change in YouTube and about how people are basically losing the plot. They're no longer coming into this wanting to have fun. I think this will inspire a lot of creators to go back to making content for the sake of self-expression and building communities. Personally, after seeing the criticism of this analytical mindset, I noticed it in myself as well. Focusing on how I can bring the most amount of value to a viewer and not really showing my personality. There is no time for fun and games. You just gotta focus on feeding this transactional relationship we have going on, basically. I wouldn't like to continue like this though. I like making chatty commentary videos like this one, and I'd like to see how I can make them more artsy and more me. As a wise man once said, we are on the side of art. I'm definitely not completely abandoning analytics though, because they are still a useful tool, and it's helpful to see the different ways that your audience is responding to your content in ways beyond just hearing them voice how they feel about it. That's the thing, analytics should be just that, a tool, not something capable of lifting you up or bringing you down. Now that we're seemingly leaving this mrbeast era, I'm interested in seeing what the new dominant style of content is going to be. I'd also like to see if content creators do truly go back to focusing on making what is fun to make. Let's hope they start to realize the pitfalls of chasing these analytics and putting that ahead of genuinely having fun. It's either that or mrbeast will beat the lawsuit, buy out YouTube, and replace every video on here with torture videos. Who knows? Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more me yapping with my friend over here who still doesn't talk. I don't know if I'll make him talk for a bit. Well, I won't make him talk because that sounds like abuse. I don't do that. I'm not Mr. Beast.
Allegedly.
Anyways, let me know what you think of the setup. I'm a big fan of the vibes and of this crusty, dusty camera. I think it's fun. Anyways, yes, subscribe for more.